ANDIZI, meaning I will not come down. A stubborn focus on building a great life. Written and read by Beauty Kotela. Part 2, The Strategy of the Enemy. From the previous section, it is clear that this building project is both an individual and a corporate responsibility, that we need each other to make the work go faster. However, each person, like in a chain, is a critical part of the building project. In fact, if each and every individual link in the chain was strong and fortified, empowered and enabled to build, we would make great progress. As individuals, should the leaders fail, should the communities fail, should our parents and governments fail, we still have our life, which belongs to us, for which we are accountable. We therefore need to take individual responsibility and rebuild. For that reason, in this section, we highlight the issues that affect individuals and individual entities, with the hope that when they are addressed, the focus will turn back to the building projects from which we all benefit. Now, let me admit from the onset that as varied as we are as people, there are also varied call downs for each and every one of us. And the enemy, the devil, in his cunningness, knows exactly which call down to use for which person or which group of people. So, while the following chapters will look at just some of the call downs for most people, we will not be able to identify all of them. The hope, however, is that in highlighting some of them, you will go ahead and do the work of identifying and addressing your individual call downs. In other words, what are your triggers? Those buttons which, if the enemy presses, he almost always gets you. The second hope and charge is that you will utilize some of the principles and tools which will be shared in addressing some of these call downs in attending to your own unique call downs. So, chapter 6, Pain and Past Hurts. When Jesus was walking the streets of this planet Earth, he spent a lot of time teaching, empowering, and warning people. This was especially the case in the last months before his crucifixion and ultimately his ascension. I have therefore learned to take a closer look at his last words as they seem to carry literal and prophetic meaning. One of the words he shared with his disciples in the book of John, chapter 16, verse 33, were, "In the world you will have tribulation." Several dictionaries explain tribulation as something that causes suffering, distress, hurts, pain, and afflictions. For physical pain, there may be painkillers. You simply pop a pill and the headache goes away. Whereas for emotional hurts and pains, you do not have a pill to pop. They are much more complex to deal with. This verse, John 16, verse 33, falls in the list of some of my least favorite verses in the Bible. And I will admit there are many more such verses. I especially do not like how true they are. That may make me strange, but it also makes me human. If we as human beings can do without pain, we absolutely would. But it seems pain is a part of the human experience. While the enemy is responsible and is the cause of the pain, while God does not cause pain and does not create pain, he allows it. And his purpose is different from that of the devil. So I'm willing to bet that each and every person who comes across this book has experienced pain in one form or another. So we are all alike in that regard. We only differ in the frequency and intensity of that pain. As you can probably predict, if there is any item in the toolbox of the enemy which he will use to distract and to call us down from our building projects, it is pain. One can argue that even some of the callbacks or some of the callback items that I will list in the following chapters still have something to do with pain or the avoidance of pain. However, I thought let us single out and talk about pain itself. As we have said, the sunballads we are addressing are mainly the internals. So here too, we look within and less without. You know how the devil hates us. When you are busy getting on with your project, somehow some of the pain and past hurts that took place in your life can just come up. There are things that have actually happened to all of us, and the list is long, varying from one person to one person. Some of these hurts and pains include all forms of abuse: sexual, physical, emotional, financial, etc., assault, loss of loved ones through either death or broken relationships, racism and apartheid, etc. Please note that past here does not necessarily mean that the pain is gone. Because even though the hurtful event happened in the past, you may still be hurting now. And of course, if the enemy were to have his way, he would keep you in that exact same spot of hurt and pain forever. When I lost my brother, I struggled to move on. Even today, if I closely narrate the death of my brother, I am often in tears. I have a lump in my throat even as I read this sentence. But before you start feeling sorry for me, I'm okay. I survived it. But when it happened, I couldn't move on with my life. I had to go for counseling with one of the pastors from my church. One of the first questions he asked me was, do you think the devil wants you to forget your brother's death? Boy, was I offended. I thought that was a very cruel question to ask someone in grief. But I later realized that it was one of the most liberating questions I was ever asked at that time. You see, as long as I stay on the 20th of June 2016, nursing that pain, I will struggle to live the life that God has for me right now as I read this book. As long as I stay stuck in that fateful afternoon when the call came from my father and told us that my brother had slept the sleep of death, as long as I can get stuck there and feel the pain, raw as it was then, I would not be able to function here and now. And that would simply spell disaster, both for myself, my loved ones, and it will also be against my God given mandate of not just life, but life abundantly. Now, I do not want to underestimate anyone's pain, grief, and any other pain that you would have felt. But remember who is responsible for the pain: the devil. He doesn't just want to hurt you, but he wants to stop you. The enemy wants to hurt and ground you. He wants you to put your tools down and cry forever. I don't know how many of you have ever experienced what I'm about to share. When we were growing up in the rural streets of Mngesha Great Place, we used to play all sorts of games on the streets just around our homestead. As is typical of children's games, fights would also break out. I'm ashamed to admit that I was often on the receiving end of some of the pushing and shoving. More accurately, I am and have always been a bit of a crybaby. So, at the slightest bit of pain, I would drop whatever I was doing. For example, I would drop the ball, put both my arms on my forehead and face, and cry my loudest while walking home to tell my mother, who would hear me a long way off. Meeting me on the way, she would ask what had happened. With a bit of exaggeration, I would narrate the story and cause for my tears. The typical story was, Ubani unbetile, translated, so and so hit me. My mother's response was also typical. She would wipe my tears, hlala mntanam, dakumbetha, translated, be comforted, my child, I will smack that one. And that would be the end of the story. But I remember how she would then say, noticing that I now wanted to stop playing and stay home, hamba mntanam, uphinde uyodlala, akazokwenza nto. Translated, go back and play, my child. He or she will not harm you. Now, reflecting on the story, I want to submit that the enemy is like a bully in the game of life. His role is to cause us pain, and he wants us to drop the ball and throw our hands up in the air, give up the play, and run away with the tail between our legs, with the intent not to play in the game of life again. And I sense God ready to wipe our tears and to tell us, go back and take your rightful place and play, my child. You have to keep playing despite the pain. The enemy simply wants you to stop in that exact place and mode and emotional state where he heard you when the pain first came. So some of us have abandoned our building projects because of the painful things that happened to us. No, you are not responsible for the pain, but you are responsible for your response to the pain. Even to the perpetrators, the mastermind behind it all is the devil himself. So let them also go in the process of letting go of the pain. Otherwise, you will build with difficulty. When our past pains keep us stagnant, the enemy hits two birds with one stone. One, he has hurt you. Then he has grounded you. You see, we may not always be able to stop the enemy from hurting us, but we do not have to let him ground us as well. While I write in plural here, the truth is that this is an individual decision and point of action. You, as an individual, are the one who must say, I am not coming down. ANDIZI. Hurt me if you must, but I'm not going to allow you to hurt me perpetually. I'm not going to stay down. The big question when it comes to dealing with pain and hurt is how. How do you cope with the pain that will assuredly come your way and seek to hinder your building project? How do you get yourself through? What are some of your internal tools, principles, and methods which you will use to ensure that pain or no pain, the building continues? Now, there are several tools that people utilize to cope with pain, the most common of which may include therapy, counseling, prayer, praise and worship, yoga, meditation, self help books, confronting the cause, talking about it, and many other ways specific to specific individuals. Which tool or method you choose is truly up to you, as long as you do everything in your might, powered by the grace of God, to ensure that you do not allow the enemy to use the tool of pain to stop you from doing the great work of building your God given life. Now, despite the myriad of tools at our disposal to cope with and eventually transcend pain, certain individuals have a habit of hoarding pain. Just like those people we sometimes watch on television who collect everything that comes their way and never throw away anything, doing this sometimes at the risk of their health and livelihood. Some of us hold on to all the pain and we never throw any of it off. Offense after offense, we hang on to it, piling up a large collection of things that people said or did to us from as far back as our minds can remember. This is an unhealthy situation, one in which the enemy thrives and one in which dwarfism prevails. You see, there can be no growth nor progress in a place where there is only one opening and it is only an inlet but no outlet. The situation described above, i.e., the hoarding of the pain, is made worse by the fact that life continues to happen. As we continue to grow and as days go by, it is inevitable, and as Jesus told us, we encounter more pain. So, if we live our lives by continually taking it all in and not letting any of it go, we will reach a point where we burst, disintegrate, or even worse, we may reach an absolute emotional meltdown. So the enemy not only hurts you, but it grounds you and ultimately destroys you. This is not God's plan, my friend. Remember what he says in John 10, verse 10. The thief does indeed come to steal, kill, and destroy, but he does not cause pain and affliction. Let me repeat. Remember what he says in John 10, verse 10. The thief does indeed come to steal, kill, and destroy. He does come to cause pain and affliction, but he does not have to have the final say unless you let him. And if you will let him, Jesus does have and wants to have a final say in the story of your life. That is why the verse closes by saying, "But I have come that they might have life and have it abundantly." I have observed that there are 5 ways in which people respond to pain. The first has already been described: those who utilize all available and positive tools to cope with and transcend the pain. The second are those who simply hoard the pain. They have a nicely filed collection of all the offenses and pains they've ever experienced, and given an opportunity, they will meticulously detail them to one who would listen. Either way, it is their pain and they will hold on to it. The third group are those who not only hoard the pain, but they allow bitterness and anger to fester up within their spirits to the point where they now live in a poisoned state of mind over something that they were not responsible for to start with. In this group, there are those who not only harbor bitterness, but actually actively go out of their way to seek revenge on their perpetrators or repeat the same offense on unsuspecting victims as a way to cope with their pain. The extreme example, which many would have heard of, is of offenders who, for example, were jailed for some form of abuse because they too experienced such abuse at some point in their lives. This is, of course, a grossly simplified example, but the phenomenon remains. Some of the bitterest people who are projecting bitterness to others are people who experience hurts and pains in their own lives. Unprocessed, that pain has turned to bitterness. No matter which way you look at it, the only winner here in this vicious cycle of pain is the devil himself, the initiator of the cycle of pain in the first place. And he gets to achieve his ultimate goal. He has stopped you from building. So, my friend, as one who has a great building project in your hands, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to others, tender hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. That's Ephesians 4, verse 31 to 32. This is difficult counsel, but it is surely a better way and the only way that will see your great project succeeding. The fourth group are those who will not use the positive means of healing. They are also not keen on hoarding the pain as it hurts too much. Bitterness and resentment are also not something they will embrace as they also come with too much pain. This group of individuals will do everything in their power to find for themselves a quick escape from the pain. I use the word quick as a differentiator because, truth be told, all of us want to escape pain. But it is the quickness that differentiates this group. These guys will do anything or will ingest anything that will give them a quick escape. This is a group of individuals who are prone to substance abuse as a means to quickly escape pain. Most of our brothers and sisters who are now battling under the heavy burden of addiction to harmful chemical substances turn to these substances as a means to quickly escape certain pain and trauma in their lives. Almost all those who are battling addiction are hurting and have been hurt. This is the painful cycle of addiction. The devil causes you pain. He then turns and offers you a quick fix to numb the pain, for example, alcohol or some illegal drugs. And if you are not paying attention, you find yourself taking the quick fix. But in no time, you have so attached to the quick fix that life without it is too painful at two levels. One, when sober, you remember why you took the quick fix in the first place. You wanted to numb the pain. Second, because deep down in you, you know that the quick fix is illegal or harmful to your body. When sober, you are also dealing with the guilt and are hurt by the thought of the pain you are causing to yourself and your loved ones. And so it seems the only way to escape is to stay high or drunk. And like with bitterness, the only winner is the devil. And getting you drunk or addicted was just the means. His ultimate goal was to get you grounded. His ultimate goal was to stop the building of the great project, and this is your life. His ultimate goal was to stop the building of the great project that is your life. And as long as he can keep you in the cycle of addiction, no building takes place. Now, this is the most challenging grounding to escape from, as it is a stronghold of the evil one. I do, however, find hope from many liberation stories in the Bible, like the one of the demoniac of Gadara, as well as the real life stories of many men and women who the enemy thought it was over with them. But by the grace of God, the help of families, friends, and institutions of rehabilitation, they have not only picked up their tools and are rebuilding their lives, but they are also rolling up their sleeves to help others who are stuck in that cycle of addiction. Either way, the enemy loses and the building continues. The fifth group is a group of individuals I truly admire, a group I constantly aspire to be part of. This group is perfectly exemplified by the character of Joseph from the Bible. These guys not only utilize the positive means of coping with and transcending pain, but they go further to utilize their painful experiences as stepping stones and rungs on their ladder of success. I've always been inspired by people who start or support drug rehabilitation centers, either as a result of them being clean from drug abuse or having lost a family member to drug abuse. I'm in awe of women and men who start support groups after a traumatic experience that they too have gone through. And I can continue citing more examples. You see, in such cases, the enemy loses twice, and I love it. First, he loses from trying to ground the first victim that he inflicted with the pain, for example, a victim of sexual abuse. Second, when that victim becomes a victor and an activist, he loses out on the possibility of perpetuating that cycle and destroying more people through the pain of sexual abuse. Either way, the building project continues. I must mention the young man Joseph as my role model in this regard because for me, he perfectly illustrates how one, with the help of God's grace, can turn pain into a huge testimony. The young man, after walking into Egypt, could have understandably carried a huge chip on his shoulders. After all, he was the one who had lost his mother and possibly his father. He was the one who had not only been rejected by his brothers and put in a pit by them, but they also sold him, his own brothers, and that is why he was now a slave. If Joseph were to be bitter, I would not be surprised. He was, however, not going to allow that to be his fate. He was going to choose to use his pain as rungs in a ladder to climb back onto the building project that was his life. Incidentally, his life was as big as the prime minister of the very country he was sold into as a slave. Listen to his words, now spoken in his old age to his brothers who were fearing his resentment, bitterness, and revenge. Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring it about as it is this day to save many people alive. Now, therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. That's Genesis 50, verse 19. Notice that Joseph's building project led to him saving not only the nation of Egypt, but the nation of Israel as well, among whom were the very perpetrators. This here is huge. And if we were all to deal with pain the way Joseph did, the enemy would lose 10-0. Now, the fear of pain is natural and common to all of us. In fact, the fear of pain is used to teach us about danger when we were young. Those that grew up in my community, the Xhosa community, would be familiar with the phrase hata. The actual word is uzaucha, and it is often used to stop a crawling baby from touching fire. So it translates, you will burn. But crawling babies who can't pronounce it, it simply says hata. So we also end up saying hata to warn them of the fire danger. The psychological impact of hata is quite deep, in that we then spend our lives trying to avoid being burned and thus also avoid the pain from being burned. Alternatively, if we did indeed touch the fire and did get burnt and felt the excruciating pain or saw someone get burnt, we would spend our lives making sure that we avoid the repeat of that in our own lives. Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't learn from our past pain or go into something blindly, no. But if the only response you have to pain is that it stops you, you have wasted your pain. Use your pain as a more than recovery tool. Let it make you more careful, yes, more thorough, and dare I say, more courageous. You now know that it hurts. You also know that you are also a survivor. You made it. God pulled you through. He will do it again. I'm not talking about irresponsibility here, danger for its sake, but pain cannot have the final say. And so I repeat, you as an individual are the one who must say to the enemy, I am not coming down. ANDIZI. Hurt me if you must, but I'm not going to allow you to hurt me perpetually. I'm not going to stay down. And this you say by choosing a means of coping with pain that will see you coming out of the other side of pain even stronger.